All right, so hi everybody, welcome to our webinar here today. My name is Eric, and I'm going to kind of walk us through some stuff here in just a second. First thing we'll do is, as you can see, we'll run through and kind of introduce everybody and get to know the team here a little bit, and then after that, we'll kind of get into the meat and potatoes of talking a little bit about the pilot supply challenges that I think the industry is probably going to face, at least, especially here in the United States in the coming years, and maybe a little bit about how airlines may deal with some of that. So at the very end, we can do kind of a live Q&A bit. So there'll be a questions section where you guys can enter in questions as needed down below, and then we can answer maybe at the end there if we have enough time. We'll see how many we can get through.
Sure.
All right. So let's get started with our guests here. So this is Phil Green and Al Timpower from Flight Path Vectors. Phil, you want to kick things off? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been in the industry flying commercially for about 16 years now, or just over 16 years, and been through some changes, some cycles. And last time I joined the webinar was actually last summer. In August, I think I was here last. And so it was a totally different state last summer, right? It was right in the throngs of COVID, something the industry has never seen. And last summer we were talking about, not to get too far ahead, but last summer we were talking about the state of the industry being terrible, right? Something we'd never seen before. There's a lot of questions, some despair. We were saying, guys, hold on, it's going to come back, and when it comes back, it's going to come back with a vengeance. It's going to come back really strong. You're going to want to be in a good position to take advantage of that, and here we are, and it has come back, and the hiring has gone crazy with all the airlines, not only the regionals but the majors.
Sure.
And so it's really exciting. It's a fun time. It's interesting to see how hard, how strong it's come back. Anyways, getting back to the original question, my name, like Eric said, is Phil Green, and I fly for a major airline here in the United States. And I formerly was at SkyWest, a regional airline, and did a lot of things there: line check airmen, professional standards, hiring, recruiting team, just to name a few, and a captain also. Really enjoyed it. But one of the things that I did over there was a mentor for the pilot pathway program as part of being on the hiring team. And so, as being a mentor, that's one of the reasons that led Al and I and some of our other Flight Path Vectors members to create this organization to help mentor guys and talk about the aviation industry, guys and gals, and help them find a good path on getting into the aviation industry. So that's a little bit about my background, and so pass it over to Al.
Al, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so for those who are return members, my name is Al Timpower, Flight Path Vectors. Again, thank you for joining us again. This is the continuing saga of pilot hiring. This has been a few months since I've been on here again. Just to recap, I am a pilot at a major airline here in the United States. I was at SkyWest previous to that, and flew other aspects in the spectrum of flying, from flight instructing, charters, cargo, whatever else. Got to experience 9/11. Not fun, and the 08 recession gave us a lot of perspective and data to kind of move forward. And as Phil was alluding, things are coming back. Some of the strengths that we bring to bear is, again, our in-depth experience and knowledge working with airlines in the hiring department. We understand what the airlines are looking for. We understand, the processes by which pilots are selected. Also, what's the determining factors that's going to make a pilot stand out among your peers? I mean, your friends, your peers are there, but they're also your competition, and we want to make sure that you're set up for success, not only for your initial but for your career. And there's a lot of things that we've done over the years that we had the opportunity to learn, that we're passing it through with Flight Path Vectors. Again, some of the experiences Phil and I and the rest of us have, we probably have almost 30 years of pilot interview experience at various airlines. So we have that to fall back on. And as Phil was saying earlier, as the uncertainty of the COVID situation happened, there was a lot of doom and gloom. We fielded a lot of questions about, what should I do? Is this a good time to get in aviation? I'm new in aviation. Does this mean I will not have a job? And we did relay some information a year ago saying, look, this is actually a good time for you as a pilot because it will return, and you have 1 year to really build your skills, to really focus on your flying, on your career, to build a well-roundedness about yourself so that when the hiring comes back, you're going to be the first ones to be considered. Some people have left the industry. Some people utilize that time to fulfill leadership roles and develop themselves, while others just sat and watched. And it was a dark time.
Yeah.
Full of uncertainty. And it was very, very hard to be motivated. And that's unfortunately the highs and lows of the airline profession.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. So now that we're here, hiring's happening. It is here. It's at the doorstep. It has not opened fully. There's still a lot of talk of people saying, hey, we're going to get hired. It really hasn't hit full swing yet. I mean, everyone is just starting to move to the starting line of the race to hire all you pilots that are out there. So, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Sure. Well, thank you. Appreciate the insights there. And I think from my own perspective, at least, it's fantastic to be able to work with you guys and hear your input. I think your experience is, I think far beyond kind of the line pilot role at the airlines, whether it was at SkyWest or where you are now. And I think that has a unique perspective, right? That maybe not even all line pilots have at the majors or at regional carriers. And I think that that's really valuable. Being part of hiring teams, for example, having that kind of insight, or being part of contract negotiations, or these kinds of things kind of changes your point of view, I suppose, right, on the industry and how things work, and maybe how airlines ultimately are going to try to manage their way through this post-COVID world.
Absolutely. And, I don't think it's a secret out there. The airlines are on the cusp of actually expanding significantly. It's typical after a lull, there's a surge. And if you just look, airlines have been in the news and for various things, some of it negative. But if you kind of sort through the minutia and filter through, you can kind of see what's happening. So some airlines are buying airplanes. Some are reorganizing their fleets. And they did a study to use the time of COVID to understand their fleet size and to better service. So they're changing things up. They're reallocating a lot of their fleet. And as a result, you look at the numbers, they need pilots.
So it seems like during the COVID, they used that period and that experience they had to go through, unfortunately, to trim the fat, not only off their fleets, but some of the pilot groups, right?
And their flight attendants.
Yeah, different work groups, aircraft, like you said, fleets. So now, like you said, they're coming back pretty quickly and with a vengeance. I think it's quicker than maybe we even anticipated that they're coming back. They're scrambling to reorganize their fleets and bring aircraft online and bring pilots back and bring flight attendants back. And so now is a phenomenal time if you're ready and have the credentials, or if you're just about ready, to jump in.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's really, really important for our prospective pilots that want to get into the industry. Fabulous time. For those who are already getting their feet into the industry, now's the time to really double down on your flight experience and really commit to, hey, you know what, I need to get as much flight time as I possibly can, and really take a chunk out of that now, because the floodgates, as it were, is going to open up, and you want to be part of that group.
Yeah, if you took your foot off the gas, so to speak, a little bit through COVID or through last year, or a little uncertainty, now it's time to really mash on that accelerator.
You really got to go.
You're right. It's time to go.
Absolutely. I think so. I think you guys had put together some data. I can pull this up for everybody here, just around kind of hiring plans from a lot of these major carriers. And I think those numbers are pretty crazy. So
pretty significant, aren't they?
They are. They're very significant, I would say, right? And I think it's well, I guess the interesting bit is to kind of compare what the hiring plans are that have been announced compared to what the current pilot, like the pilot group looks like at those carriers. In most of these cases, the hiring looks like it's going to be a pretty significant percentage of the total population, sure. Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, our last webinar, there was a couple unknowns we didn't know at the time. All the airlines were offering early retirements. The actual numbers that were being published and how many pilots within each airline's respective group took those early retirements, unknown. We did not know. And as Phil was saying earlier, the numbers that we came before were fairly conservative. And now that the numbers are out, that how many pilots have taken those early retirements is significantly more than what we thought.
And the demand that has come back.
And the demand's come
so
back
strongly, so quickly, also affects those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're seeing in the airlines, I guess the discussions, as it were, online is they haven't seen this much opportunity to make money over the summer in years.
Right.
Years. I mean, what that means is there's more flying right now than there are pilots. There's more. So as an enticement, the airlines are offering financial incentives for pilots to fly over their vacation, to cancel their vacation, to
fly on their days off.
You know, and they're involuntarily rerouting you, involuntarily extending you. I mean, just to get the flying going.
Just to get it done.
Just to get it done.
The demand is so high.
It's so, I mean, on the one side, financially to make money is there, but on the flip side, when you want to have a day off, you may not have one.
So it's a little bit different from the COVID time.
Yeah,
you have a lot of free time whenever you want it.
Absolutely. I mean, you're trying to fly fine, but now it's just everywhere. I mean,
and all these numbers at the higher end, all these numbers at the majors, no matter what level you're at, you might think, okay, it could go from I'm not even started working on my ratings to I'm a CFI, I'm almost to my 1,500 hours or whatever ATP minimums you need. You know, it can be anywhere in there. This is going to affect you at whatever level you're at.
Absolutely.
And this is exciting. This to me is opportunity. This is hope for your career. This is a lot of potential. You know, because it's a trickle down effect that we've spoken about in the past.
And just to be clear, the data we're going to show you, we're going to show you just specific data from major airlines, not to discount the other low cost carriers. You have Spirit, Allegiant, JetBlue. They're hiring equally as much.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're having the assumption here that as a pilot, your goal is to get your ratings, go to a carrier, and then go to one of the major airlines, or major cargo carriers. So those are the numbers we're going to look at. So again, to give you a bigger picture, this is not including Spirit or Hawaiian or JetBlue
or some of the regionals
airlines as well.
Right.
So, because there is a collective of pilots who will probably go to a regional and decide, hey, this is where I want to stay.
That's true.
And that's absolutely fine.
But since it's a domino effect, these larger airlines hiring and the numbers that they're hiring, it's going to trickle down, or you could say it's going to suck up all the airlines along the path, right?
Right.
So they're going to all want to go to these, or a lot of them want to go to these major airlines, which has probably been their goal. And so as a result, all the regionals are going to hire. As a result, all the flight schools that need instructors, they're going to need more and more instructors. So it's just going to trickle down to where it's a phenomenal opportunity, and will be for the unforeseeable future.
Oh yeah,
right.
At least
for guys coming
5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So you think, I feel like there's probably two main reasons why the hiring numbers are such a significant portion of the total pilot population. One is this retirement concept, whether it was early outs or just the mandatory retirements that are going to have to happen over the next decade anyway. And two is just growth, right? So airlines are going to grow, and ultimately, if airlines are going to grow, they have to have a larger pilot pool, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
So how much, which do you think do you think that that's going to change depending on the airline? Do you think all the airlines are kind of in the same similar boat?
Well, the one outlier is going to be American Airlines. American Airlines, they're going to probably be the most affected by the 65 rule. You have to retire at 65. They have the most senior seasoned pilots of the airlines. They merged with with US Air, which is a very senior population of pilots. So they're going to feel a lot of the retirements. They're going to grow as well. So if I was to say, well, which one are we feeling the most, it would be American. So depending on the airline, on the growth and the retirement schedule, it's going to be dependent on each. Now, that, of course, assuming that every pilot will make it to 65. The more I'm at the major airlines, the more I'm realizing is the older you get, the harder it is to maintain that medical. And there is a significant population of the pilot group that are out on medical that can't, for one medical reason or another, get a medical certificate, and they're in the process of trying to get it back.
So that factors in.
That factors in, but that's a nebulous thing. How big or small can that be? But
sure,
that's a definite factor.
And I think to get back to your question a little bit, I think all that factors into it on some level, Eric. But I think especially, and we spoke about this last year, about the early retirements that were offered by most of these major airlines, and about there's a pretty good number of pilots, captains that took advantage of the early retirement programs that are gone.
They're lucrative.
They're gone now, right?
Yep.
And we think that has served to accelerate this demand for pilots, right? So between just natural growth and these different airlines have different, I think, growth strategies and levels of growth that they're looking at. So, and different fleet sizes, all kinds of stuff go into how many pilots they're going to need, but also certainly the pilots that retired, the captains that retired, I think has served to accelerate, these numbers that we're looking at here, the demand for pilots.
Yeah, are you seeing these
right
numbers?
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And another thing I've been, this is just my personal theory, especially with the summer travel, since a lot of international travel is still restricted because of COVID around the world. I think people are wanting to travel and take vacations in general. I think that has really served to accelerate the demand and the number of passengers traveling, especially this summer, domestically.
Yeah.
They still want to go on vacation. They still want to travel. Maybe they can't go overseas, but they're flying a lot of domestic destinations.
Sure.
So if you've been to the airport lately or been on a flight lately, you've noticed this summer especially how busy it's been. And I think that's been a part of it.
And all the new city pairs that we see, right? All the new destinations that pretty much all of the airlines now are flying to, right?
Sure.
Suddenly Montana is a huge destination, it seems, for most of the carriers, which is historically not necessarily the case.
Same with Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, most of the majors have been adding destinations.
yeah, absolutely.
A lot of like
Trying to
tier
grow.
2, tier 3 cities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to grow their networks through all this.
Right.
Yeah.
So historically, that would be a quote unquote regional type flying, Savannah, Jacksonville. Major airlines are now sending
Bozeman, right?
Bozeman.
Yeah.
Are sending their own aircraft instead of sending it out for more passengers.
Because the demand is there.
The demand is there, absolutely.
Right.
Increasing the frequency as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how 2021 ends up playing out.
I think this year I've seen numbers so far this year through the end of June, 841 pilots have been hired.
Wow.
At airlines this year. So
Wow.
From everywhere, from
Like across the board?
across the board.
From any 121
Yeah.
operators?
Any 121 operator or cargo, I think 841 is the number that have been hired this year to June.
Yeah.
So, and I think the bulk of it has been since March.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. SkyWest told us when they were here, a couple weeks ago, that the rest of the year they're planning on 200 new hires a month, right? They're 100 on the CRJ, I think, and 100 on the E-Jet, and they're planning to do 200 a month indefinitely.
Which is a huge.
That's a crazy number.
It's a crazy. The schoolhouses can train that many pilots.
So just to give you a brief view as far as the airlines are concerned, how many pilots do you have to interview to get 200 pilots? Okay,
That's a good question.
it's a very good. So
Per month.
per month.
How many would you have to interview per
how
month?
many you have to interview? So it's typically a 3-to-1 ratio. So if you need 200 pilots, you're gonna have to find 600 applicants because of those 600, you're gonna have some that are not qualified, some that may not. The pilots do say no to airlines.
Yeah.
If I want to go to this airline or the other airline. The other factor is maybe for that 200 pilots you need for that month, you may have a portion that can't make it in that month. They have to go over to the next month.
Sure.
So if you need that 200 pilots for that month, you're looking at 600 pilots to interview.
Which is really exciting because it's gotten back to the point rather quickly where you can go where you want to go. Maybe we're not fully there yet.
Not quite yet, but it's moving that way.
It's almost there. You know, if you want to go cargo, if you want to go passenger, if you want to go to a specific airline because you want to live in a certain city, whatever the case is, whatever your list of priorities are, it's rapidly getting to that point where, hey, it's back.
Yeah.
This pilot shortage is returned. And after we get through this initial surge and initial group of applicants of pilots that are ready to go right now, that shortage is going to hit hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, when I was talking about the starting blocks where everything's going, you know, just look back pre-COVID, everything stopped. Most airlines stopped hiring. They stopped their interview teams. They stopped everything. They kind of set that to the side because they're trimming fat. Because all the airlines are losing millions and millions of dollars a day. So
hemorrhaging money.
So what they had to do to streamline their workforce. So most of the hiring teams, most of the HR departments in most airlines were on the sidelines. Well, now they're brushing the dust off, getting it back together, maybe making some changes to be okay. Let's do something. So they're working that and trying to fill their capacity and feel what their capacity is, and they're not up to speed yet. But when they make that transition to like they know their capacity, they have their process, and everything's done, and then they have it streamlined.
It's stabilized.
It's stabilized. You're going to be having a lot of choices.
Yeah.
Now, where do you want to be? Do you want to be on the front side, or do you want to be a little down the road?
Sure.
Right. I mean, I think we can all agree, seniority, the unspoken, rule of your life in the airlines. You want seniority.
It's the currency of the airlines.
It's the currency of the airlines. Absolutely.
So when do you think it'll be stabilized? Do you think by the end of the summer or into the fall? Once it slows down a little bit with the busy summer travel season, that the airlines will be able to kind of take a breath, the hiring department, so to speak?
So, I mean, Phil, we were in the training department, like as Phil said before, the schoolhouse or the training house at the airlines have a capacity. So right now, if we're going to look at the capacity of that, right now it's probably filled with pilots that took extended leave. They're coming back for training. And then they also have the recurrent training for the active pilots that they have to have it done. So they have to work that in on top of that.
Yep.
On top of that, they're going to have to retrain all their check airmen and all their sim instructors because the schoolhouse was trimmed down during COVID. Now they have to spool it all back up. So they'll add them back into the mix. And now you're going to put new hires.
There's a lot that goes into it.
There's a lot going into it. So I do know that the airlines have been, not just our airline, but other airlines, there's been a lot of opportunity there. If you wanted to join the training department, they're hiring people to do interviews, or hiring people to do sim instructors, or hiring people to do check airmen or a ground instructor, because during COVID, those positions were gone. Not completely.
Yep.
But severely trimmed down,
Thinned out.
in order to save money. So, that's good. But until all that's all up and running, they're not going to open the floodgates completely, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah, that's interesting. I think, there's capacity issues for sure across the board as they, I think like how you said it, they have to kind of work through all of the changes, right? So it's not something that can just flip on and off like a light switch.
No.
There's a process to all of these things, and there's time involved with training everybody, right? And then not just that, but keeping up with just normal AQP requirements, right? And like keeping your pilots current is still going to be a major part of where, sim utilization might be and this kind of thing.
So I mean, if you look at these pilot numbers, take a look at which airlines expanding their training training facilities. I would venture to guess most airlines are expanding their training facilities for this influx of pilots.
Or scrambling to utilize their training facilities to the utmost potential.
Absolutely.
Getting the most out of the training facilities.
Right.
Squeezing as many pilots that are fall into all these different groups, right, that they need to get trained into these training facilities.
Or using training facilities in other cities that historically they've never used before. That's another common practice.
Well, not to pick any one airline out, but I'll use an example. For example, SkyWest. I think when Al and I went through their max training, the max amount of pilots they could put through at training in any given month is probably closer to 100.
Yeah,
you think? Because they had mainly the one schoolhouse in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Now they've got, which is awesome for SkyWest, they've got 2 schoolhouses they can utilize. One in Denver, you know, with the 175, that training program, and then Salt Lake City runs the CRJ training program. So they've got 2 completely separate full training houses, so they can go to those high numbers, 200 pilots a month, which is huge.
Yeah.
A lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's certainly going to be interesting, and I think you know, the normal way progression works in the industry is the regionals tend to feed a lot of those major carriers, and so you know, if the majors make statements like this about how many people they're going to lose, the regionals can quickly see an expectation of how many people are going to be, you know, leaving their ranks, and already basically have a plan for how much they're going to need to grow.
React appropriately.
Right. Start feeding your ranks early, and that way you're not caught in a position where you can't service flights because you don't have crew, right? Because I think that's something that, for a regional airline at least, is probably hugely cost like prohibitive, right? When you have to cancel flights because you don't have crew, it becomes a huge cost burden to a regional carrier.
It's not just the cost. You're putting your contracts with those partners at risk.
Right.
You know, they do have verbiage there for a certain completion factor that they have to hit.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you can't hit it, you know, then it's costly, 1, but 2, you know, they renegotiate these contracts fairly recent, and you have to account for it, right?
Yeah.
And if you say, well, I can't fly these because I don't have any pilots, that's not an excuse. You know, we have planes but no pilots, not an excuse.
Right.
Yeah, very, very exciting time right now.
Oh, absolutely.
With these numbers. And last year, like I was saying earlier, you know, there were a lot of unknowns, right? There were a lot of worries, a lot of concerns. Hey, should I even get into this industry, or I'm gonna leave this industry, or what should I do, right?
Yeah.
And we were saying, hold strong, hold fast, so to speak. Work on getting your ratings, work on building up your resume, get involved, polish up your resume, because when it comes back, it's going to come back big. And here we are. It's exciting.
So at that point, I think it's interesting. Do you think there was, you know, prior to COVID, there was a lot of hiring that was going on, and especially at the regional level, I think there was probably a lot of, we'll call them lessons learned, right, of hiring pilots that maybe didn't get through training as easily, and you know, it became like a whole challenge. Do you think that the airlines are going to put more focus on the interview process and kind of the application interview process moving forward to ensure that the people they're bringing in are going to be, they're going to be successful through their program, and they're going to be good line pilots for that organization?
That's a really good question. So I had a conversation with a chief pilot of an airline, and a fairly lengthy conversation, and he basically said what they're seeing as far as a product, let's call it a pilot in your career, is a product. The product of what they're seeing is not in line with what their expectation is, the airline's expectation. So there are certain things that they would like to see that, again, they don't want to invest any more money than they have to. It's very expensive to train airline pilots.
So make them more compatible with the training program coming into the airline.
Absolutely.
And more successful as they transition to a line pilot.
Yeah.
So you think that the interview piece is going to try to capture that a lot more?
Yes. So the interview processes that the airlines are going to be using, I'm sure some of you have been interviewing, you hear your friends who've been interviewing. It's been different than, say, 2018, much different. I mean, at this point, and they're not going to change it, unfortunately. The new norm, as it were, is this new virtual interview. I'm sure you've heard about it, read about it. Airlines have been doing that because of COVID. The ability to travel and or do face-to-face has been diminished, so they're doing this.
Plus, with these numbers, economically, it probably makes more sense.
It makes more sense. They're not going to go to an in person. It's just too expensive for them to do. Well, yeah, we do 600 interviews this month
to fly everyone
to the interview team and or somewhere else, because the airlines historically did do that.
Yes.
When you were invited for an interview, they gave you a ticket, and on top of that, you have a whole interview team, typically 3 to 4 people, who would interview one candidate. Whereas now they can have a virtual interview, and it's one-on-one. One person. So financially, the airlines have moved towards that. I think for the foreseeable future, they're going to stay to that because of the numbers they need. and the cost savings and how many people one person can do 5 interviews in a day.
Right.
So there's that. So what does that mean for pilots? If the expectation that pilots have out there is that, well, it's going to be just like 2018 or before, that's not a reasonable thought processes. The airlines have changed. It's up to the pilots to identify those things and identify what they need to change to be successful to meet that challenge. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how much of a shift there is if there's certain if airlines start to kind of diversify into different metrics that become more of a priority for them than others, right? If they want to see certain things on a resume or they want to see certain attributes in an applicant, and other airlines focus on different things, you might start to see that they fit differently into different places.
I mean, as a commodity, as a pilot, the airlines are their biggest interest is for you to get online and to fly. Yeah. Having you in training is not in their best interest. I mean, they're going to do everything to make sure you're successful. However, if they're getting pilots from a specific source and those pilots are requiring 3 more sim sessions and 2 more days of IOE versus everyone else, they're
going to take notice.
They're going to take notice of that.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, okay, what is it that those segment of pilots are needing in training that the other groups, the rest of the group doesn't need? That they're getting through training maybe quicker, cheaper, and more effectively. What are they doing? They take note of that. And they look at that, and it's a bottom line thing. It's an efficiency thing, because for every time that person's ties that check airman or sim instructor up, that's time away from someone else who can go through their training regimen. So that being said, what can you do as a pilot to make yourself more marketable so you're not one of those identified lackluster pilots, let's say. Lackluster. So the first,
to make yourself stand apart, to stand apart, herd, so to speak.
Yeah. So the first thing I can say, which makes a huge difference, is invest in yourself and your career. Really, really strive for excellence. I mean, try as best as you can to strive for excellence. This is your investment into your career. That in itself is a lot more than a lot of other people who just walk in and say, "Oh, I'll fly planes. This is fun."
Yeah. When you get on with the major, you don't have to strive as much. Right now, I'm joking. Joking. So just you have to strive more.
You have to strive more.
Yes.
But have the mental wherewithal to say, I will strive for excellence.
Well, and that is a great mentality to carry you all the way through your career, all the way till you retire. Strive for excellence.
Absolutely.
Do the best job you can, right? That's gonna protect you. That's gonna make you a professional pilot. That's gonna reward you in so many different ways.
Absolutely. During those rough days where you could be, I don't really want to be here today. You strive for excellence. You got to be there. Remember, for all the prospective people trying to get to the airlines, you're going for $1 million job interview. Mm-hmm. Are you up to the task?
Right.
No one's going to hand you a $60 million plane and say, good luck.
If you've tried your best, you're always going to have, and if you strive for excellence, like Al has said, that'll include striving for professionalism. You're always going to have that to fall back on. And you'll be able to fall back on that, like maybe on bad days or tough days, or maybe on knowledge level. If you have a question about decision making as a pilot, I mean, you're always going to be able to fall back if you strived for excellence and try to do your best. Another thing I would say that you can do right now, and I don't know if you're going to get to this yet, Al, or not, but and we've spoken about this plenty of times before, is this is what I feel personally strong about. Get involved with wherever you're at, all right? If you're at a flight school, or if there's anyone tuning in to us today who is at a regional airline, get involved in a safety program, get involved in some kind of service capacity. Not that you're going to be financially rewarded, but you'll be rewarded on different levels. Experience, you'll make contacts, and you never know where it's going to lead. You're going to build your resume. You're going to develop your person as your more professional pilot. You'll develop, and that'll turn into opportunities in your career. I'm a firm believer of that, and I saw that at SkyWest and Al, I know you saw it too.
Absolutely.
And Eric, you've probably seen it on the administrative side of kind of developing your person here and going outside your comfort zones, outside the normal, right?
Yep.
Go outside your comfort zones and get involved with whatever programs you can get involved with, because it will reward you on ways and levels for your career, for yourself personally, that you can't fathom right now and that you don't know. It's a ripple effect. And I guarantee it, there's going to be a ripple effect, and it's going to lead you to more opportunity and more success, more satisfaction, right? Not just monetarily, maybe monetarily, but not just monetarily, but just helping others, serving others, and doing things like that. So
it helps you to be more well-rounded.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I get it's about that kind of keeping a different perspective, right? I think if you're a pilot that just thinks you're going to be, a bus driver forever and ever, and you can just keep your head down and stay under the radar, you're probably not thinking about this in quite the right way. You're going to end up being pretty upset with yourself halfway through your career, and it's just going to be work at that point, and you're not going to really enjoy it probably.
That's the exact word I was going to use. You're going to enjoy it so much more. It's going to be so much more rewarding if you make that a part of your mindset.
Yeah.
Getting involved, serving, helping others, right? Not just what's in it for you, but look around and see what you can help others do. And it's going to serve you well throughout your whole career. And I think in general, you're going to get so much more satisfaction with your career. And, airlines, these major airlines and people you interact with, you're going to interact with pilots from maybe the airline you want to go to eventually. They're going to notice that in your personality, in your character. They're going to see that. And they're going to say, hey, this guy would be a great fit at my airline. Let me get your contact information. Let's stay in touch, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You never know where it's going to lead, or who you're going to meet or bump into, or who you might rub off on. But
that's true.
Either good or bad.
Good or bad.
Good or bad.
That's it.
So
yeah, I mean, that's true, right? You have a bad day, and you're, even something simple like you're having a bad day, and you're just trying to commute home, and you have this real negative attitude, and all that's left is a jump seat, and you end up kind of having that attitude with the captain as you're getting on board to get the jump seat. And where's that going to go for you, right? I'm guaranteed not in a positive direction almost, right? And I get that it's a tough day or whatever, but you always have to kind of keep that professional piece at play, right? Because that captain might be part of your interview when you try to apply to that airline.
Well, you want to hear a funny, quick story? We had a captain from a regional airline came over on our jump seat, and the captain just happened to be one of the most senior flight operations for our airline. Very, very, very well. I think he's in the top 4.
Wow.
Okay, so he's way up in the food chain. And he was in this jump seat pilot was in the jump seat and was very, very boastful on how he did all these different things. I was very proud about it, and I was kind of looking at him like, yeah, no, don't say anything. Well, when he left, got to destination, that captain who was in the flight operations pulled his jump seat card, and he said, I'm going to make sure that person never gets hired here.
Wow. Yeah. You never know.
You never know.
There's always someone watching, especially when you're wearing a uniform.
If you're wearing a uniform,
they're looking at you, and you don't even know they're looking at you. Right.
So just mind your P's and Q's, be professional, be happy.
I mean, I think it's the same story, right? Like all of us would be in the same boat. If I meet somebody in whatever capacity, right, and I interact with them, in my head, if I go, I don't ever want to have to sit next to this person in an airplane and fly a plane with them, because I don't feel like that will go well at all.
Like, absolutely.
That if that's the impression that I get, then that's how I'm going to act moving forward, right?
On the flip side, if you meet someone, you're like, wow, what a dynamic, great person.
Right.
Well, I'm going to go out of my way.
Yeah.
I am going to go out of my way, and I'm going to help that person. Absolutely. So it's a two-way street.
Sure.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
So for all you out there who are thinking about this, I know it sounds daunting. It's not. You here there, if you're considering AeroGuard coming here, there's a lot of assets. There's a lot of people here. Flight Director is another asset you can use, help you get through those questions and rough times. So, ask questions. You have to ask questions.
And I was going to mention this earlier. I don't know if this is a good spot for it, but one of the reasons we formed Flight Path Vectors, and maybe this is personal to me, but I think it's also with Al too. We came up in this industry. We didn't have a dad or an uncle in aviation that we could lean on, right, and ask questions. We wanted to provide that. So we don't charge. If you reach out to us and call us or text us, we don't charge it for. We genuinely want to help good people get to where they want to go, right? And find out about this industry and how rewarding it could be, and help them along their way, because we never really had that. And that was one of the functions that we served in as mentors at SkyWest Airlines. Once you help people do that, it's its own reward. You really help people get to where they want to go, and it's very rewarding.
Absolutely.
And that's really what we enjoy doing. So,
absolutely.
So, I mean, I think on that point, for anybody kind of going through this, whether they're just starting out in training or somewhere in training or trying to figure out how to get to their ATP minimums or whatever, there's obviously, I think, kind of on the heels of all of this hiring that's happening, we've also seen the development of a lot of different programs from different carriers, right?
Sure.
As far as, you know, Delta has Delta Propel, United has Aviate, right? And so on and so forth. And so there's just kind of different tracks people can take to ultimately get into these airlines, whether they're, you know, the like an American Steel, they have their 3 wholly owns that they have flow through agreements with, or United has kind of an interesting structure with Aviate and flying with specific United Express carriers. And so I think it might be interesting to kind of talk a little bit about each of those and why they're different, I guess, and what maybe some of the pros and cons might be.
So it's actually, this is indicative of where we're at in the industry. This has never happened before.
Right.
Okay, everyone's looking forward. The airlines now are identifying and understanding that the airline that has the most complete package and access to pilots are the ones who will move themselves forward in the future. Because if you don't have pilots, you're not moving metal.
Trying to create pipelines.
Trying to create their own pipelines. So
they're scrambling to do it.
Absolutely. So what does this mean? What this means is, as if you're a prospective person trying to get to the industry, where you go to school matters. So I know it's going to be very hard to understand, but you have to take a look at this as your decision and in the macro, in the big picture. Where do you want to end up? For instance, if you wanted to go to American and you said, hey, I want to go work for American for one reason or another.
Who knows?
Who knows? But you decide to go to the Propel program. Well, you know, it's going to be an uphill battle. It's not going to be impossible, but it's going to be a much more difficult versus going into the American program, going through, you know, their wholly owned subsidiaries, Envoy or whatnot, and go through there. The flow-through program is, you know, you go there to their respective programs. You spend some time in a different airline. Let's use American Envoy, and then at a prescribed time, when you have enough seniority, you seamlessly move over into mainline American Airlines.
Sure.
Okay.
Get a ground school date.
You get a ground school date and you move on.
Right.
I mean, the benefit there is you do one interview.
Right.
You know, I mean, airlines, to find an airline job is a full-time job in itself.
And I've heard another benefit there recently from some guys, and I tried to dissuade them to include this as a benefit, but saying maybe they don't want to get their degree, their 4-year degree.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So if you go through American Airlines flight training program, and you say, hey, at all cost, I do not want to get a 4-year degree to pursue this, that would be one route that would enable you to get on with Envoy or one of their
Circumnavigate that requirement.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I don't think it's a valid argument because it limits your options.
Yeah.
That's just me personally. And I think Alpha's like that
same
too.
thing.
You close a lot of doors, unfortunately, if you don't have that 4-year degree that would otherwise be open.
Sure.
You know, so I know it's just a piece of paper, and it's an expensive piece of paper now,
And
if you want to call it that.
But, you know, let's call it like it is. I mean, how many airlines in the last 10 years have gone away?
Yeah.
There was a lot of pilots who were there who were like, well, I was betting on that to get onto these airlines, and then all of a sudden their airline is gone, and now they're on the outside.
Or that program went away.
Or that program went away.
Or they implement the requirement. Say,
Absolutely.
okay, we'll only take flow-throughs and they could change it. We'll only take flow-throughs if you have a 4-year degree or something like that.
They can do that.
They certainly could do
So,
that.
you know,
It just makes you that much more competitive with every other pilot, and you want to do anything and everything you can, right? Because as Al said, multi-million-dollar career. So you don't want to limit yourself and limit your options as to where you can go, right?
absolutely. So, I mean, one of the other cons of a flow-through program, and I've seen it twice in my career, It's not a one-way road. So you can flow from a regional or subsidiary envoy to the major carrier, but when that inevitable downturn comes, it's the other way around, where the major airlines, instead of furlough, they'll send those pilots back to the regionals. And if you're the junior person in the regionals, well, you're the one that gets furloughed.
And what if you got flowed back, hypothetically, now you're back at a regional at those lower pay rates, unfortunately. If you had a 4-year degree, going back to that argument, you could say, you know what, I don't think I want to stick with this airline anymore because I just got flowed back. I see opportunity over here at this other major. I'm eligible because I have this experience. I have my 4-year degree. I'm going to put my resume, my application with that airline.
And that's happened.
Yeah, and that certainly has happened. Maybe you've got a bad taste because you got flowed back. With that lack of a 4-year degree, all your eggs would be in that one basket, so to speak, as well, in that situation, that specific circumstance.
Yeah, I think it's, I think that those elements are kind of interesting. I do think I hear a lot of students kind of as they're comparing, or like potential students as they're trying to get in, go, yeah, but it's like a guarantee, right? So like the luxury of there's a guaranteed job with this flow agreement. I'm guaranteed. You're like, okay, but at what cost are you going to absorb that guarantee?
And at one point, I think, and I don't know if you felt this way, Al, but at one point when my options were limited and I was a low-time pilot, I felt like that guarantee was pretty awesome.
Oh, absolutely.
As you build your experience, as you build your hours, as you build your resume, you start to see all these other doors opening along the way. In that guarantee, you're like, you know, that doesn't mean as much anymore. Because I got all these other options that I've worked hard to get, right?
And what happens when, I think another big thing that I try to emphasize a lot is that maybe American seems, as if we continue to use that as the example with flow agreements at least, American, obviously is like the largest carrier as far as aircraft fleet and pilot population is concerned in the US here, and I think almost globally. But is it even the company that you want to work for? I think like when I went through training, I just assumed all airlines are basically the exact same thing, right? So airline is an airline is an airline, whatever, it doesn't really matter, and they're all going to be the exact same. So it doesn't matter if I go to American or Delta. I'm going to be the same person no matter what. Yeah. The reality is, I think most people, when they start, let's say at a job at a regional airline, for example, they get exposed now to crews at those other major carriers.
Sure.
And now all of a sudden they can start to see, like, what is it like, right? If I jump seat on a Delta flight versus American flight, I can start to see maybe some of the differences in culture that each of those companies might offer, right?
Or you talk to guys, you talk to the pilots in those groups,
right,
and you see the differences and what they have that affect their quality of life. Not only pay,
right,
but the ability to move around trips maybe, or the amount of vacation they get a year.
Work rules, all the work rules.
Go down the list, right?
So again, for the flight instructors, everyone out there, it's kind of hard to really navigate that because you don't know the contracts. You don't know what in the airline we call the total compensation package. I mean, the airlines do a wonderful job of just putting, you get X amount of dollars per hour.
Yeah.
And most people can relate to that. I worked at whatever place, I made $10 an hour. You can relate to that, okay? But you don't look at what's called the total compensation, your bonuses, your retirement, what is your quality of life like for commuting? Do you have domicile protection? Do you have a commuter clause? Do you have all these different things that will, affect your paycheck? 1, 2, your quality of life. And every airline is different.
They're huge difference.
Huge difference
at different airlines. Just one example. I had a jump seater from another airline in my jump seat a few weeks ago, and he was telling me that they get their bid comes out every month, and they get, let's say, on average 86. He said they can pick up extra and go up to about 90 hours per month, right?
Yeah.
But other than that, they're limited extremely. And in fact, the union sends them nasty grams if they try and pick up more, or if they pick up more flying than that.
More than about 90?
Yes. Yeah. So they're really
stay in line.
That's just about a hard number, right? And so they're 90 hours a month. The airline that, just one example, the airline that Al and I are at, we can
as much credit as you want.
We can pick up.
Legal.
Yeah, just about as much credit as you want. Last month, I think I did 140 hours
Wow.
legally, right? My block wasn't that high. My block didn't exceed 100 within the revolving 300 or
30.
The revolving 30 days, right?
Yeah.
My block didn't exceed 100, but my hours, the credit was 140. You can't, just that small thing, which attributes to a significant pay raise, isn't available at certain other major airlines. So just that one thing is just, so as you find out different things like that along your career path, your perspective, your priority
changes. So
perspective changes, your priorities might shift a little bit.
Right.
Not saying that the priority is always on the pay.
Sure.
But it will shift as you develop and gain experience.
Yeah, I think I think the point is there's almost no way, especially as you're first going through your initial training, like working on private instrument commercial, these kinds of things, to really know, unless, like as you guys had alluded to, you have a family member that is already at the airline and can tell you all the details about that airline.
Yeah.
But there's no way that you would know necessarily across the board as to what is different, and to really be able to compare and contrast various carriers. And I think making a decision at that level is a really big risk.
It is,
right?
And unfortunately, I mean, along with all the unprecedented times we have right now, there's an unprecedented pressure on, if you're getting into the airline industry right now, or you're a flight instructor right now, is that you're making decisions right now that's going to affect you 30 years from now. Okay, so, or you're just getting into the industry, like, okay, where I go to school, does it matter? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, no, it didn't matter. Today, it does matter. So making that decision and having that forethought and actually looking and trying to forecast, well, what's important to me? I don't have a wife and kids yet, or I don't have a spouse and kids yet, but I might, and I might want to live in Cincinnati. You just don't know all those things. So having, that's an extra pressure of making a decision where you don't know the flavor of the airline you're looking for.
Yeah. And going back to what Al said earlier, you might be thinking, well, what does this mean to me now? Right now, I'm an instructor, or I'm working on my ratings. I'm at that level. Why do I need to be worried about the majors and some of the differences in majors now? Well, let's go back to what Al said, something just a simpler model. Be professional where you're at right now and excel with what you're doing at right now, and getting that mental mindset, so that down the road, you don't make a mistake where you're at right now. And as Al just mentioned, 30 years down the road, you've kind of pigeonholed yourself or closed some of those opportunities. If you stay in that mental mindset of being professionals now and excelling where you are at right now, and my personal motto is trying to get involved, helping, serving others, developing your resume with all that stuff, it's going to serve you well and keep more options open for you in the future. So what you can do right now is do all those things that I just mentioned.
Absolutely. And again, selecting where you're going to is huge. Getting involved into an airline program is going to help you out when you start getting to the airlines. It's going to help you kind of develop the mental processes that the airlines need. It's not intuitive to learn by fire hose, let's say. It's not intuitive to go into an airline ground school and be like, oh yeah, this is comfortable, I can handle this. It's very, 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 very difficult. And now the airlines, I think it's even more streamlined now. I think when I was at my initial ground school was 3.5 months. Now it's 2.
Yeah.
So now they're requiring you to know more faster.
Well, in talking about the current industry, we're talking about not bringing interviewees, applicants, flying them up to the airlines, right?
Yeah.
Doing it online. And that's also found its way into the training curriculum.
Yeah.
For example, SkyWest Airlines, the first half of your training is going to be done at home online.
Yep.
Right? And so circling back to what you can do right now, if you have developed good study habits, if you've developed an excellence in your own personal study habits and training, and kind of kept your bar high, so to speak, that's going to serve you well, because there's not going to be an instructor in class driving you for the first 2 weeks, or the first half of what used to be your training at a physical location at the airline that you got hired with.
Right.
Now you have to drive yourself to make sure you learn all that information, because you're still going to be taking those same tests for in-dock or maybe some of your systems, right? But now you have to drive yourself to do that. And so what you're doing right now, I hate to keep harping on it, but will serve you well in the future if you develop good habits.
Yeah, I think another piece to that, right, is trying to do things from home is not the same thing. It requires a different kind of motivation, right? If you go to training and they put you up in a hotel and it's just you're all alone, you got your own stuff, and you're kind of secluded from your regular life. Whereas at home, you have many more distractions, right? That require you to have sort of that dedication, that focus, to be able to keep moving through. And I've seen that just on the ab initio side, right? On the initial licensing side, I think that's a common challenge that students have, is to remember to stay focused on all of the studying that goes into getting ready for that next mission, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And where do you cut your teeth and learn that is, go to an airline program. So.
Or geared towards
the airlines.
Yeah, geared towards the airlines, so that the transition after you do that program will be easier and not so foreign.
Absolutely.
It'll be more familiar.
Right. Yeah. Less of the GA style of things and more of this program is aimed to make airline pilots. That's its target,
it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah. Great.
Good. Well,
any questions pop up?
I think now is the time we can kind of pivot to sort of the Q&A session here. I will pull them up and there we go. We can start running through. There's quite a few, so already there, but certainly everybody can put in your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can, and then.
And if we don't, I think like last time, the questions were disseminated.
Yeah.
And we actually reached out to individuals personally and answered their questions for them.
Yeah, for sure. If even if we don't get to your questions, we will absolutely be downloading all of these questions that everybody enters. And if it's specific to flight path vectors, I'm sure they'll get back to you. If it's something about AeroGuard, I'll get back to you.
Eric might get back to you depending on his schedule.
Terribly busy.
Busy man.
All right, good. So first question from Russell. I've been wanting to fly for a long time now, but I don't have my pilot's license yet. It's very expensive. Can you give me some direction on how to get my licenses? Are there any grants or special training that I can do? Do I need a mentor to help me?
No, this is all you, Eric. Russell, talk to Eric. He'll get you going. Good resource.
I would say you don't need a mentor necessarily, but one would help.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
So it could help you save time and money. So I would say talk to as many people as you can talk to, and then make an educated decision based off of that. That's a short answer.
For sure.
And the long answer would be reach out to Eric, reach out to us, because we like to know your specific circumstances, maybe where you live. Are you looking for full-time training? Are you looking for part-time training? Do you have a wife and kids where you have to work still part-time? I mean, all that factors into it.
Yeah.
What your goals are, right?
But on a timing aspect,
yes.
If you're willing to say, I've always wanted to be a pilot,
and I definitely want to do it,
yeah. Like hell or high water, I want to do it. Now is the time to do it. Actually, yesterday was the time to do it.
But last year
was a great time to get into it.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to start right now, start right now.
And I think so. Kind of to pivot to that, I think this is something that I see often. It's somebody who wants to maybe get into this, but there are a pretty large disparity across the U.S. right now as far as the training market is concerned. Mm-hmm. And this is where maybe mentorship can come in handy, is doing a program like sort of these airline-esque programs tend to be, at face value, more expensive than if you go to the local FBO and you go, oh yeah, well, this guy over here, he can get me my private license for like $8,000 or something like this. And you go, okay, yeah, that's true, but what are you getting for that money? And I think it's about identifying that, it's the whole thing. Are you buying that green plastic card, right? Yeah. Or are you buying an education, I guess, is the important bit.
Russell, here's a couple things. I'm a big proponent of, I don't think you should go to school unless the day you finish you finish school, you have a job. Right now, as far as the FAA has studied, the need of pilots, so how many commercial airline certificates they're issuing, there's a 34% disparity, which means there's 34% less pilots being trained than what is actually being needed. So that translates to, if you go to be a pilot, you will have a job.
Opportunity.
And you'll have opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, there's that. Can you do other places cheaper? Okay, there's a difference between opportunity and money. Okay, so if you go get someplace cheaper, okay, there's that. But what are you gonna do with those certificates? How much harder are you gonna have to work on the outside to get an airline job versus I'm in an airline environment being mentored by airline pilots to get transitioned to an airline job. It's seamless, and there's other benefits that Eric can talk to you about, you know, pathway programs, seniority, we hear say that buzzword a couple times. Sure. That's benefits to you versus, you know, going down to Uncle Bob's down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But will you learn to fly an airplane? Yes. Is the stick and rubber skills, will you get the same? Yes. Will you get a airline education? No.
Yeah, I think that that's really important for the same reasons we talked about near the beginning, with the idea that the interview process and the candidate that these airlines are going to be looking for needs to
be in line,
be aligned with that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Joshua is an Air Force helicopter pilot with like 2,800 hours or so, very little fixed time. He's wondering if we anticipate an airline-funded like RTP or rotor transition program will ever come back online, and if so, when? Any ideas?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service,
Joshua. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, that's a good question, probably for, I don't know, Eric, for the RTP.
I mean, yeah, I think as far as airline-funded RTP programs, I think they're trying to figure it out. I think, you know, it had its place, especially pre-COVID. I think that there were a lot of struggles. There was a lot of transitional changes that these airlines kind of had to deal with in these RTP programs, and so I think they're trying to. I think that they'll come back, but it's a matter of, once again, I think figuring out how do we interview and select which guys we want to maybe put through, or gals,
they
right?
Might come back in a different form.
Right, maybe
slightly different than what they had before.
Yeah, the process, I think, is maybe going to be possibly maybe just a little bit more rigid as far as what the expectations are, right? I think it's going to be more of a, okay, we expect you to get it done in a certain amount of time, and they want to see that you're devoted to it and not just taking a free ride, basically, to get these ratings done.
So I guess the short answer is they're not back yet.
Correct.
But if you want to talk about SkyWest specifically, they've already brought back a lot of their programs.
Sure.
And reinstituted their programs that they had in place prior to COVID.
Right.
Like pilot tuition reimbursement or the pilot pathway program. And so I think to support what Eric was saying, it's probably just a matter of time, and on short order, we could expect it to be back in one form or another.
But Joshua, I just want to reiterate, you're not dead in the water.
No.
Are there things you could be doing right now to move things along? Yeah, it's expensive to fly. Let me just say that. Okay, Joshua, it is. And if your goal is going towards the airlines, you're a lot further ahead than a lot of other candidates. But there's a lot of things you could be doing to help facilitate things and kind of streamline yourself to the airlines. I mean, you have some flight time. And as you know, there's more to it than just the stick and rudder skills. The instrument flying skills, or reading charge, checklist usage. There's a whole slew of things that are slightly, well, actually, I'd call it significantly different than the military. We deal with the military pilots all the time, flight path vectors. Give us a call. We can kind of help you develop that. Call Eric. See, he'd be a fabulous point of contact for that RTP.
Yeah, all of us are I guess we're biased, but are good resources for you to, and especially these are highly individualized questions, which we're more than happy to answer. We'd love to expand expand our answer and some options, give you some options if we can talk to you on the phone and about your specific circumstances. Right here, we're a little bit limited on time, but we can certainly
more generically,
yes, delve into your specific situation more so on the phone if we can talk to you.
Very good. There was, okay, so there's another question. What is the starting salary for a pilot in 2022?
At the
regionals?
That is just generic from Sharon.
Is it
Sharon?
Is it Sharon? Is it 45?
I thought it was
SkyWest?
Roughly. Well, okay, so I think there's two things here to consider, right? First of all, at a lot of airlines, first year pay is generally always
Lower.
quite a bit lower than second year pay.
Well, and it used to be, and now we're seeing that not so much.
With bonuses and that kind of thing, maybe not so much.
When Al and I first started at SkyWest, it was
17 something an hour.
I think I was 19 and change an hour, so 19.
And I didn't get paid for training. You didn't get paid until after your check ride.
Till done with
the first 3.5 months, you didn't get paid.
Now I think SkyWest, I'd have to look. You can find it on like Pilot.
PilotCentral.com will have it. It'll have
if
their
you look at SkyWest, it'll have their starting pay scales. But I want to say it's around 45
46,
general numbers, 46, and then maybe the second year bumps up to only 52, which is still good money. But when Al and I were doing it, it was a significant bump from first to second.
I went from 17 to like 39.
Yeah. It was significant back then. Now it's not so much, which is good, and it's good that they don't start you off so low, obviously.
Sure.
Another thing to factor, she asked about 2022.
Right.
Prior to COVID, we saw a lot of sign-on bonuses with different regional airlines.
Yep.
I think those have maybe
come back. Some airlines
might have started to come back for some airlines. If not, by 2022, I have a feeling that we'll see a resurgence of those sign-on bonuses. So it's hard to answer that question specifically for 2022 without knowing at what level those bonuses will come back. But I do think that they'll be back in place. SkyWest never had a standalone sign-on bonus.
Yeah.
What they did have was they had certain things like pilot tuition reimbursement programs. They had, if you came from another 121 carrier.
Soft landings.
I think right now, if you come from another 121 carrier, it's $7,500. So they have that as a bonus if you transition from a.
Yeah, I think it's if they're captain qualified though.
Oh, okay.
Or they have maybe the 7,500 is if they already have the type.
If you have the type. DL65 type rating.
Yeah, and you're just a really good pilot.
Or your name is Chuck Yeager.
Chuck Yeager.
Your name is Chuck Yeager.
You have the CL65 type rating.
And they do have, in addition to that soft landings program where if you come with prior 121 time, they start you out, if you've got a year at another airline, they'll start you out maybe second year pay at SkyWest.
Yes, that is correct.
Or if you got 2 years at another 121 airline, they'll start you out at 2 year pay at SkyWest.
Right.
So go down the list.
Okay, so these are kind of all in the same boat here.
It was about money?
Or things we've already talked about.
I think we just muddied the waters to the answer the last to Shayna's question. Was it Shayna? Sharon's question. So sorry if we muddied the waters for that, but there's a lot that goes into that. So. But that's another thing. Al spoke about the total pilot pay compensation earlier. And so that's another hard question to answer because there's a lot that goes into it. So you see the hourly pay rate, but there's also how they pay, vacation pay, or if they got to pull a trip off your schedule, do they pay you for that? I mean, there's a lot of different
deadhead pay. There's
deadhead pay.
There's certain airlines. There's one airline you get quarterly bonuses, and you get bi-yearly bonuses. So you get 6 bonuses a year,
like profit sharing
bonuses. So that's all listed in the contract, and every airline's different.
Yeah, our airline, for example, prior to COVID, routinely we would average an extra 10, 11, up to even 16% of what we made the year prior in
as our bonus
sharing as a bonus. And so stuff like that is hard to factor in because you don't know exactly what that number is going to be for the next year, or through COVID if it's going to be there.
If you're going to have it, yeah, right.
So there's another question. We get this one, I think, quite a bit. So it's, is a career change to the airline still a viable option if you are 40?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I have a gentleman right now who's 53.
Yeah.
And yeah, to make a change. And he's like, well, is it worth it? I'm 53. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Totally.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. When you start looking at that, you know, a 5, 10, 15-year compensation, oh, absolutely. I didn't get into the airlines until I was 36. I was 36. I didn't get to the airlines at all until I was 36.
And now
I'm retired military, so.
Yeah.
And you bring a lot of good life experience.
Yeah.
Hopefully good life experience with you.
Yeah.
Going in at the earlier age, so that could certainly be a benefit, something appealing to the airline.
So, and how old is 45?
40.
Oh my gosh, without a doubt.
So if you're 40 and you started tomorrow, your private pilot's license, let's walk them through real quick, just a quick rundown of how long it would take to get to your first regional job.
So I would say a reasonable would be 4 years.
To your first regional?
Correction. To your first regional?
Yeah.
2 years.
Two
and a half years.
Probably about 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5, I would say, because that first 9 months, you're working on, to a year, you're working on your ratings, and then you're building your time after that.
Yeah,
that's a flight instructor.
Hour and a half
Year and
a half to 2 years after you get your own ratings to build up to your ATP minimums, which is typically 1,500 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're on with a regional. It might take you 2 years to upgrade.
What did they say last time? Under 2 years?
Or under a year and a half.
Yeah.
So after you've upgraded, build some turbine PIC time. That might be a year and a half to 2 years building turbine PIC time.
So that's 6 years, 7 years?
To a major. And once you get to the major, and when the majors and those pay scales, I mean, the pay scales are nice, right?
Indeed.
That's what you're going for. So if you're 40 and you got on with a major airline, let's say
before you're 50.
Yeah, but even before you're 50. At
15 years at the major.
At our airline, we had a gentleman get hired at 51, and he had mandatory retirement at 65. He's still going to have a great career, even getting on at 51.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. At our airline, it's going to still be well worth it financially.
Well, I mean, if you're just talking about straight financially, yes, okay. But then, I don't know what you're doing now, but I worked 7 days this month. I flew an airplane for 7 days this entire month.
And we're at 14th of July.
I'm on the 14th of July.
Yeah.
So that's a full-time schedule.
Yeah.
And at our airline, a typical full-time schedule, if you don't pick up any additional flying, is you're flying 12 days a month.
Yeah.
Right. So you're off 18 days a month.
So, I mean, as you get older, what are you going to do with your time? It's a management of time thing.
It is.
So you're going to have the financial piece, but you're going to have financial freedom.
It's going to be there.
It's going to be there.
And for us, we don't know what else to do with our time. That's why we're here.
A little bit of truth to that. But, so yeah.
There's several questions about the kind of the corporate side as well. So are charter airlines or corporate aviation hiring at the same rates as the commercial airlines and cargo?
Good question. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. So it's a different. They have a different model. It's corporate is far different. It's a lot of who you know. Okay. In the corporate side for the premium corporate jobs. Like when I mean premium, I mean like flying the G5s, G650s, the BBJs, the global expresses. I mean those are the top tier type things.
In the upper level pay rates.
And the upper level pay rates. The net jets, fractional ownerships, that type of stuff. Yeah, you're gonna get into it, flying a Citation or whatever else.
And some decent money could be made there too.
Yeah, but the schedule's different.
Yeah, schedule's definitely, because it's a lot more on call basically in most of those situations.
So if the airlines schedules differ from airline to airline,
corporate's
the corporate is like a horse market. It's you can find all kinds of corporate schedules. So you can be gone for a month at a time on the other side of the world with the Gulfstream or Global. If that's what you want to do, or you could find a corporate where you're never home away each night. You always make it your way back.
Yeah, you're doing just
some of those pay rates or pay levels or aircraft sizes might be smaller.
Yeah,
there's those, the range of those, and everything in between.
Yeah,
it's so dynamic.
So, well, okay. I think maybe a different way to sort of frame that is potentially the demand to like the percentage of hiring might be close, but the problem is that it doesn't have the volume on the corporate side that we have on the airline side.
Will they be hiring there? Yeah, a lot of corporate pilots transition to the airlines. That is very frequent.
Especially if new pay agreements come out of those
Exactly.
legacy carriers, right?
Yeah.
If new pay agreements come out, then it becomes
People want to go there.
they yeah, exactly.
So will they hire? I mean, yeah, they'll be hiring. Is it going to be at the rate of the airlines? No.
Not the volume.
Not the volume, no.
And I would say in the corporate world, there's maybe a bigger question mark with the stability.
I think the one thing, I flew with this one gentleman who flew corporate aviation for 22 years before he went to the airlines. He said, man, I had a great corporate career. 22 years. He said, but every corporate...
He probably had a bunch of ratings.
He had a bunch of ratings. He flew all these different airplanes. He probably had,
yeah.
I don't know, 6 or 7 jets.
Wow.
But he did say something to me that was profound. That I was like, okay. And he said that I work for great corporate departments.
Yeah.
But all those corporate departments have one thing in common. They're all closed. So
He was forced to move.
He was forced to move. So the stability has always been a little bit different over in the corporate side. But he loved flying. He loved flying there. He loved collecting his Lear and Challenger type ratings. He had so many of them, but inevitably he ended up towards the airlines. So, but
and it really comes down to the personal fit.
Yeah.
It might be right up your alley. You might get into it and say, I never want to do anything other than corporate. This is such a great fit. I love, whatever. I bumped into a guy who was getting his rating on a G650 just 3 weeks ago in Long Beach, which is $100,000 training type rating, right? It's not cheap.
Wow.
So that's like one of the cream. I mean, the only bigger in the Gulfstream family would be the 750 now, I think, or it's coming out.
Yeah.
So 650 pilot, and I told him I was at a certain airline, and he's like, oh man, I had thought about going to that airline. I kind of wish I'd gone to that airline. I put my application in there years ago, and they never called me. But so I don't know why I mentioned that. Maybe you're always looking at another airline pilot saying, "Oh, that sounds cool. I wish I was there." Maybe the grass is always greener on the other side.
I mean, I think the corporate side is such a wide spectrum, right?
Sure.
If you end up in like if you look at like the corporate departments of huge like top 50 kind of companies, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about companies like the
Like
Google and Apple and Disney and these kinds of organizations. Sure, they're very stable, right? But they're very, very hard to get into because it's always who knows who, right?
And they also might have pensions as well. So that might be a pro to getting on with a large company's flight department, right?
Sure.
Maybe Disney, you get hired for Disney as a pilot, or Coca-Cola, or go down the list of some of these larger corporations,
right? And
you're involved with that retirement program that the company offers for their other employees because you're an employee for the company. Anyway, so that might be a pro, but there's certainly pros and cons to every every type of flying.
Sure. No, I think that's interesting. I do think that they'll obviously be hiring, but I think it's going to be a different game as far as
the career path's a lot different. It's a lot of who you know. So the relationship building is very, very important.
Probably one of the most valuable things you're going to do is build that network.
And something that I heard about corporate specific to last year in COVID, not to beat a dead horse, sorry, but I heard that some of these charter and fractional jet ownership type corporate departments were booming because people didn't want to fly on normal airlines. Yeah. So I heard that on that side of things, they thrived pretty well.
Oh, business travel?
Travel, because these people who could afford to were electing to buy into jets or buy fractional ownerships or buy tickets on corporate aircraft, business aircraft because of COVID. So there's that.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right, I have another question that's specific to Alan Phil. What do you each think is the most challenging aspects of being a pilot? What are some of the major challenges of the airline industry effects on pilots? So, yeah, what is one of the biggest challenges of,
Well, for me,
yeah,
you're gonna be in school for the rest of your life.
okay.
Okay, you're just constantly learning. You never stop. At the airlines, you're gonna have FAA required training 4 times a year. That's not including your one trip to the simulator to spend 4 days to test your knowledge, so to speak, and do your check rides. So you're constantly studying. You're always studying, always. So you're getting the gouge to study for your AQP sim ride, and then you have X amount. You have 60 days to complete all these computer-based training, and it's just a never-ending cycle. And then you get we have these things where before you go fly, you have to read all these changes to your policies and your operation specs, and they're going to change all these things mid-stroke. We're just going to get comfortable with something. Oh, here's change number 35. This one will do this something different. So for me, it's just the diligence to always just for me, it's hard
To maintain that high level.
the high level, because I just want to go. I mean, for me, I just want to fly a plane. I just want to fly a plane. Come on. I mean, but
Changes
why would
procedures.
why did you have to change the procedures? It was fine before. So it's just, for me, that's a major challenge. The other challenge is personalities.
Okay. All right.
Just always, being, just getting so many personalities. It's just always different.
Juggling that.
And
Always juggling that.
well, not just other pilots, but other crew members or like anybody else that
Yeah.
you're operating with at the airport or ATC or wherever.
So cabin crew.
Absolutely. So as a pilot at an airline, I don't care which airline, I don't care if it's a major airline, an airline, period. Your area of responsibility is going to touch so many other jobs and so many other people, both next to you and states away. And just kind of being the quarterback, so to speak, to make it all happen.
Right.
And dealing with everything and be okay. We got this is the mission.
They're going to look to you to manage that.
You got to manage that. It's again, I don't think anyone says I want to be a pilot because I want to manage people. No one says that. I want to fly planes. Flying planes is cool.
Yeah,
But
exactly. But that is a huge.
that's a big part of the
huge
job.
part of it. That going into it.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah.
Never knew that. So,
but if you're on the flip side of that, if you're kind of a people person, that can be kind of fun.
it's kind of fun.
If you enjoy interacting with people. If on the other side of that, if you don't.
It's just and again, this is one of the jobs where you can go. It's like, what route do you fly? You can fly the same route every day, day in and out, and it will never be the same.
Yes.
Ever.
Yep.
Always a changing environment.
I think for me, one of the bigger challenges in this is me personally, would be the juggle between family life and having time at home with the family and being gone on the road. So my wife and I, we're married. We've been married 20 years, but we got into this together, so to speak. We made the decision together for me to get into this industry. So she's been really supportive with that. But juggling that in the type of lifestyle we lead as airline pilots can significantly affect.
It can.
And it has on some level, it has an effect on the home life. Now, the goal for us has been to try and mitigate that and keep that as minimal as possible. And that can be affected by the type of airline you get on with, by the type of flying you do. Is it cargo? Is it corporate? Is it passenger, commercial? What company, like I said, what company you're with, right?
Work rules, right?
Work rules, yeah. What size of aircraft you're flying? Typically the wide bodies, or like in the corporate.
Heavy haulers.
Yeah, heavy haulers,
Yep.
You can find cargo jobs where you're flying cool 747s or cool 777s or 767s, but you're gone for 2-3 weeks, even up to a month at a time, depending on the company and the schedule, right? And that needs to be, in my opinion, factored in somewhere on your priorities, so that you can decide what the best fit is for you.
But taken as a whole, even though I'll be honest with you, studying is not my forte. I get it done, and having that professional mindset and striving for excellence, you got to get it done, and you do it. So
And I think
I do it.
I think a lot of pilots tend to focus on the positive aspects and enjoy really genuinely enjoy flying and what they do, enjoy the job. And I think Al and I have probably fallen into that category. Yeah, you can focus on the cons, but we love it so much. And really, if you're getting into aviation, get into it for the right reasons because it's something you enjoy doing or something you love doing. And I hate to say it, but
don't tell my company I do it for free.
That's all done that reasoning, that drive, because you love to do it, will serve you well.
Absolutely.
Also in this industry.
Yeah, it's absolutely taken as a whole. I've done so many other things outside of flying. I can't imagine myself not doing this.
Yeah, same here.
It's rewarding. It's great, and I feel so strongly about it. I'm really encouraging people, be a pilot.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, be in life, be a pilot. Trust me, you'll love it.
Well, that's another reason why we have this organization, Flight Path Mentors.
Yeah.
Or Flight Path Vectors in the mentorship organization is because we love what we do.
Yeah.
And we'd love to help other people get into this industry.
Absolutely.
Because we want to fly with cool people.
Right. Once you've had one bad trip, like, I just want all the pilots to be cool.
Just like you. Just like I can fly with you all the time. Yeah, you family members? I mean, are they all the same much?
Yeah.
Bring them on.
I like it. Okay. Okay, so this is from Aaron. I am seeking a cargo-oriented career, not like a commercial airline, passenger airline. How could I improve my resume to make it more cargo attractive?
Okay, that's a good question.
Cargo-centric.
Cargo-centric.
So cargo airlines are very specific. So yeah, as every place you go fly, we said corporate's very much about who you know, building that network. As far as cargo, I'm assuming, FedEx is high on the list, or UPS. I mean, when you talk about cargo, everyone always thinks about those things. Let's take UPS, for instance. UPS, they require some heavy transoceanic experience. So they take a lot of their pilots from like ABX, ATI, Atlas, so which of them and those several are not bad entities.
Right.
But I'm sure a lot of those pilots want to go to UPS. UPS is like the holy grail.
And FedEx.
FedEx is very unique in that FedEx puts a high premium on who you know within the company. Specifically, do these people within the company that can vouch for your aeronautical decision-making skills? So
or not.
Or not. Right. So what that means is people at FedEx have to recommend you, and specifically those people have to have flown with you.
Helps out a lot.
It helps out a lot. So what does that mean? Right. Well, one, you're developing a relationship with current FedEx pilots and having some kind of flight experience with them.
Sure.
So that they can vouch for your aeronautical decision making.
Go to the FedEx large hubs and offer to wash cars in the parking lot?
I wouldn't say that's a bad idea, but yeah. So those are the things about for cargo. Now,
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But it's interesting with FedEx specifically. Al and I both know quite a few people who came from our former airline, SkyWest, passenger airline, Part 121, who are now flying for FedEx.
Well, we've learned something else. FedEx likes SkyWest pilots.
Yeah. So with that being said, for FedEx specifically, if that was your goal, you don't necessarily have to come up through the cargo track, right? You don't have to start flying Caravans or some Cheyennes or some small cargo plane, work your way up and go through ATI Atlas. For FedEx specifically, there's multiple ways to get there. Would you
I agree. That's a fabulous point.
Now UPS, on the other hand,
they require heavy transoceanic experience.
Or
that's one of the things we're looking for. Preferred.
Unless maybe someone high up in the company or something to help you out the door or something that would set you apart in that sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, okay, so maybe I'm sure others outside of the industry may wonder this, but why then, if you're going to fly big transoceanic routes on heavy metal at a company like Atlas or whatever, why then would you ever want to make the transition to a company like UPS? Aren't you already in the aircraft doing the thing? What would make those different?
Well, again, talking about work rules, let's talking about contract, talking about total compensation,
schedules.
schedules. I mean,
Quality of life.
Quality of life,
is a big
exactly.
one.
Yeah.
You know, UPS is the holy grail, right?
Sure.
And you think UPS and FedEx are equal footing, or do you think?
You know, yeah, they're fairly comparable.
Yeah.
I mean, UPS are the highest, top dollar guys,
Okay.
top dollar pilots.
There might be some FedEx pilots that argue that. There might be some senior FedEx captains that say, let me pull out my W-2 and show you.
Yeah, okay. But, yeah, I think they're fairly comparable. I will say between the both of them, FedEx is hiring more.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
You know, and there's more than one way to get to either one of those two airlines.
Yeah.
You know, you could work on your own ratings at a flight school and start as a CFI at that flight school. And let's say, hypothetically, you get 500 hours as a total time. You know, you've been working as a CFI for a little while and you built your time up to 500 hours. You say, hey, I want to go fly cargo someplace. So maybe Ameriflight or something similar to that might hire you at 500, 600 hours. And you could start down that track and start flying larger and larger planes for them, and then go to either SkyWest Regional or go potentially to like an ATI or an Atlas or something like that.
Yeah.
Where you're going from maybe a Brasilia at Ameriflight, a twin engine turboprop, to now you're flying a 767 or 737
DHL or something, or 75.
Yeah, and so there's definitely more than one way to get to where you want to go if it's cargo.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Okay. Well, I think we're running out of time here, and the questions just keep coming. So,
all right. We got plenty of time, Eric.
I mean, I don't get 18 days off a month. I guess maybe that's the differentiation. Our definitions of time are a little different from one another.
I mean, once we leave here, we got to go home to our wife and kids. So, you know, I'm joking.
So I think we'll definitely run through all of the questions, and I'll kind of disseminate that to everybody.
Okay.
I'll also make sure that we send a follow-up email to everyone that was in attendance, and make sure that they have contact information for Flight Path Vectors, as well as for the team at AeroGuard here. Yeah, I think maybe we'll get going. Maybe we can schedule for sometime in end of Q3, beginning of Q4 kind of time frame, and see what all has happened.
To see what happens.
Yeah, what all has changed since from between now and then.
There's got to be a lot. You know,
I think so.
Just in Q2, we found out that United's going to eventually fly supersonic jets.
Right.
And they just announced a few days ago that they're going to fly all electric.
Yeah, those 250-mile.
The Heart. Yeah.
So they had the VTOLs, and then now they're doing those the prop planes that high wing Heart.
Yep.
Heart 19 or whatever it's called.
Heart. Yeah, that's it. Well, 19 passenger.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see some interesting developments in the industry.
All right.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up and reach out to us.
Appreciate you all in attendance, and we'll catch everybody on the flip side.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.